My divorced parents put cameras in every room of both their houses, including the bathrooms, to film us kids 24/7, because they each thought the other was poisoning us against them for their custody battle. Mom made me leave the bathroom door open so the hallway camera could watch me pee, while Dad documented me looking depressed. Then, when CPS removed us, our Aunt Kara took us in. But I overheard her telling Dad's lawyer, "I have enough footage of them acting violent now," because she was being paid to stage incidents and make us look disturbed for court. My mom and dad installed cameras in both their houses to film our every move. You see, they each believed the other was poisoning us kids against them. It started with them recording our phone calls and making us repeat bad things the other parent said. They'd play these recordings for their custody lawyers while we sat there cringing. When my brother Jake said Mom's new boyfriend seemed nice, Dad made him call Mom back and say he felt uncomfortable around the guy. But Dad said he was protecting us from Mom choosing some stranger over her own children. He genuinely believed every custody battle was won by whoever had the most dirt on their ex. When I turned 13, Mom announced a new system. Every room in both houses would have cameras recording 24/7 to a cloud server both parents could access. She made it sound reasonable at first, something about transparency and co-parenting and making sure everyone followed the custody agreement. But then she explained that the footage would be reviewed by both parents daily. Dad installed his cameras that weekend. Suddenly, every moment of our lives was being recorded and scrutinized. I couldn't cry about missing my friends without Mom texting Dad that I was emotionally dysregulated at his house. My sister Emma couldn't play with dolls without Dad recording it as evidence that Mom was infantilizing her. When Emma got her period and quietly asked Mom for pads, the conversation was on camera. Dad's lawyer used it in court to argue Mom was sexualizing Emma too young by discussing menstruation. I developed anxiety about existing in either house. Every movement was analyzed by both parents, who sat watching feeds for hours. Mom would text while I was at Dad's. "I saw you didn't eat the lunch I packed. Are you trying to make me look bad?" Dad would call during Mom's time. "Why are you in your room alone? What are you hiding?" I just wanted to be a normal kid with divorced parents. Emma started wetting the bed from stress, but couldn't hide it because of the cameras. Both parents blamed each other and submitted the footage to prove the other was causing psychological damage. Mom and Dad's war escalated through the cameras. Mom would stage elaborate, healthy dinners during her custody time. Dad would counter with footage of expensive outings and presents. Every day brought new performances designed to make the other parent look inferior. But I had a plan. I saved up birthday money and bought a can of spray paint. For 2 weeks, I fantasized about freedom from the cameras. I could talk to my siblings. Honestly, I could cry without creating evidence. Then Jake caught me with it and immediately told Dad to score points. Once Dad knew I'd planned to vandalize the cameras, he called Mom, and they united for the first time since the divorce. Mom installed additional cameras in my bedroom aimed at my bed to monitor my mental health. Dad put cameras in the bathroom, claiming I might hurt myself and needed constant supervision. They made me quit my after-school activities because I couldn't be trusted without video surveillance. My friends stopped texting because they knew their messages might end up in court. Mom called other parents, warning them I was exhibiting destructive tendencies and couldn't visit their homes. I couldn't even use the bathroom without performing normally for the cameras. Both parents would text immediately if I spent too long in there. Mom started requiring me to leave the door open so the hallway camera could see inside. When my teacher called, asking why I'd been falling asleep in class, Mom told her I was being evaluated for oppositional defiant disorder. Dad filed an emergency custody motion with footage of me looking depressed at Mom's house. Neither mentioned that I couldn't sleep because I knew they watched the bedroom feeds all night. But when the social worker arrived for the evaluation, she asked to use our bathroom. She saw the camera pointed directly at the toilet. She called her supervisor immediately, and when child services showed up the next day, they found cameras in every room, including close-ups on our beds and bathroom cameras that violated state privacy laws. Mom tried to explain it was for custody documentation. Dad insisted the other parent made him do it, but the investigators pulled thousands of hours of footage showing us kids living like prisoners in a surveillance experiment. They interviewed us separately. Emma broke down sobbing about wetting the bed on camera. Jake admitted he'd started self-harming in the small blind spot behind his dresser. I told them about the spray paint and how I'd rather be in foster care than filmed constantly. The judge reviewed a sample of footage that afternoon. He watched Emma crying under her covers while both parents texted each other timestamps. He saw Jake silently mouthing, "Help me," at a camera. He watched me staring dead at lenses instead of doing homework. Both parents lost custody immediately. We went to our aunt's house while they were court-ordered into extensive therapy. Her house felt safe for exactly 3 days, because one day I came home from school early and heard her on the phone with our dad's lawyer. "Yes, I have enough footage now. The kids trust me completely. When do you want me to start showing them acting violent?" The whole rescue had been staged. I froze in the hallway, my backpack sliding off my shoulder. The words echoed in my head. Footage. Acting violent. My aunt had been filming us too. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I backed away from her office door, trying to process what I just heard. Emma and Jake were upstairs playing video games, completely unaware that our supposed safe haven was just another trap. The office door swung open. Aunt Kara stood there, phone still pressed to her ear. Our eyes met. Her warm, caring expression flickered for just a second, revealing something cold underneath. She knew I'd heard. Her hand trembled slightly on the doorknob as she lowered the phone. Neither of us moved. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly between us. "How much did you hear?" she asked, stepping forward and positioning herself between me and the stairs, between me and my siblings. My mouth went dry. I forced myself to smile, shrugging like I'd just walked in. "Sorry, just got home. Didn't mean to interrupt your call." Her lips curved into that same sweet smile she'd worn when she picked us up from the courthouse. But now I could see the calculation behind it. She wasn't fooled. "Come help me make some hot chocolate," she said, her voice still honey. "You look cold." I followed her to the kitchen because what else could I do? She moved around the space, pulling out mugs and heating milk. I noticed how she positioned the mugs on the counter, perfect angle for the corner where a tiny lens glinted in the overhead light. "This transition must be so difficult for you," she said, stirring cocoa powder into the milk. "After everything with your parents." I nodded, watching steam rise from the pot. In its surface, I caught another reflection. Another lens tucked behind the spice rack. "Jake, Emma, family meeting," Aunt Kara called up the stairs. My stomach dropped. I heard their footsteps overhead, then on the stairs. When they appeared in the doorway, I tried to signal them with my eyes. "Something's wrong. Don't trust her." But they just looked confused. "Sit, sit," Aunt Kara said, gesturing to the living room. "We need to discuss some new house rules." We filed in and sat on the couch. I scanned the room, my trained eyes finding what I was looking for. Tiny cameras in the corners. Same brand our parents had used. My chest tightened. "Now," Aunt Kara began, settling into her chair with her mug. "I want this to feel like home for you, but every home needs structure. So first rule, no closed doors. I need to be able to check on you, make sure you're okay." Emma shifted beside me. I knew what she was thinking. She'd been wetting the bed since the stress started. Now she couldn't even change in private. "Second, we'll be having mandatory family activities every evening. Board games, movies, cooking together. Won't that be nice?" Jake nodded automatically, but I saw his jaw tighten. Aunt Kara watched each of our reactions carefully, filing them away. "And third, I'll need to know where you are at all times. For your safety, of course. Just like your parents' cameras were for your safety." That night, I waited until the house was quiet before slipping out of my room. I had to warn Jake. His door was cracked open, and I found him sitting on his bed in the dark. "I knew something was off," he whispered before I could speak. "She kept asking me questions today while you were at school, about whether I was angry at Mom and Dad, whether I ever felt violent." My blood ran cold. She was building a case, just like our parents had. "We need to tell Emma," I said. We found her in her room, crying silently into her pillow. The sheets beneath her were damp. She looked up at us with terrified eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I couldn't help it." "It's not your fault," Jake said, sitting beside her. "Emma, Aunt Kara isn't who she seems." I grabbed a notebook and pen from her desk. We couldn't talk freely, not with cameras watching. I wrote, "She's recording us too, working with Dad's lawyer." Emma's face crumpled. Jake took the pen. "What do we do?" he wrote. I replied, "Stick together, act normal, don't give her anything to use." We made our pact there in the bathroom, the only place I hadn't spotted cameras yet. We flushed our notes down the toilet and hugged each other tight. The next morning, Aunt Kara served us pancakes with syrup smiles. "How did everyone sleep?" she asked, her voice dripping concern. "Any bad dreams? Feelings of abandonment?" I chewed mechanically, noting how she emphasized certain words, leading questions designed to elicit specific responses. I wonder what kind of person thinks putting cameras in bathrooms is somehow going to help their custody case. The way these adults kept finding new ways to watch us made me curious about what they thought they were actually achieving. At school, the counselor pulled me out of English class. "Your aunt called," she said, notepad ready. "She's concerned about some destructive thoughts she's observed." I kept my face neutral. "I'm fine." "She mentioned you've been isolating yourself, showing signs of anger." Every word I said would go in a file somewhere. "I'm just adjusting." Meanwhile, Jake texted me from the cafeteria. His teacher had separated him from his friends after Aunt Kara warned about his negative influence on other students. When I picked up Emma from daycare, her teacher pulled me aside. "We're documenting some troubling play patterns," she said. "Your aunt asked us to keep detailed notes." The net was tightening around us. That evening, my best friend's mom called Aunt Kara. I heard her end of the conversation from the kitchen. "Yes, I understand your concern. No, I had no idea about the aggressive behavior. Of course, I'll make sure they don't spend time together." Another connection severed. Jake, Emma, and I met in the school bathroom the next day, the only place we could talk freely. "She's isolating us," Jake said, "just like Mom and Dad did." "It's worse," I said. "She's turning everyone against us." My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. "How's Aunt Kara's house? She says you're settling in well." I stared at the message. Did he know what his lawyer had arranged, or was he being played too? That night at dinner, Mom called. Aunt Kara put her on speaker. Performance mode activated. "The children seem emotionally distant," she said, watching our reactions. "They're having trouble opening up." I heard confusion in Mom's voice. "That's not like them." Testing my theory, I said, "Actually, I feel really safe here." Aunt Kara's smile flickered with irritation. She needed us troubled, not thriving. At school, Jake's friend Marcus mentioned his mom worked for CPS. "She could help if something's wrong," he offered. A tiny spark of hope. Emma, meanwhile, had started drawing at daycare. Pictures of houses filled with eyes, cameras with X's through them. Her teacher collected each drawing, concerned. "We have an appointment tomorrow," Aunt Kara announced that evening, "with a therapist who specializes in children from high-conflict divorces." But when we arrived at the office, I recognized the woman who greeted us, Dad's lawyer's assistant, wearing a blazer and fake glasses. "Let's talk about your feelings," she said, notepad ready. "Do you ever have violent thoughts? Want to hurt yourselves or others?" We gave rehearsed answers about feeling peaceful and grateful. The woman's frustration grew with each healthy response. Aunt Kara's mask was slipping. She needed results, and we weren't cooperating. The performance had to escalate, and I knew it would, because just like our parents, she believed custody battles were won by whoever had the most dirt. Only this time she was manufacturing it herself. I woke early the next morning to find Aunt Kara already in my room, rifling through my backpack. She pulled out an old math worksheet, studying it intently. Her fingers moved across the page, and I watched in horror as she added violent doodles to the margins with a pen that matched mine. She slipped the paper back into my bag and left without noticing I was awake. My heart pounded as I realized her new strategy. She was planting evidence. At school, my math teacher discovered the worksheet during class. The crude drawings of stick figures fighting caught her attention immediately. I recognized the trap and quickly claimed it was part of a creative writing project I was developing. The teacher seemed uncertain but accepted my explanation. During lunch, Marcus approached me in the hallway. He mentioned that his mom had been reviewing some reports about our family situation. She told him privately that Aunt Kara's story didn't quite add up. The timeline of events seemed suspicious to someone with her experience. That afternoon, I heard a crash from the living room. Aunt Kara screamed that Jake had thrown a lamp at her, but Jake had been in the bathroom when it happened. I'd seen him go in just moments before. The neighbors rushed over at the commotion, including an elderly woman named Mrs. Finch from 2 houses down. Jake emerged from the bathroom confused, and several neighbors confirmed they'd heard the toilet flush right before the crash. Aunt Kara's story fell apart, but she managed to plant seeds of doubt about Jake's unpredictable behavior. The school must have reported their concerns because a CPS worker arrived the next day, but this wasn't Marcus's mom. This worker seemed oddly prepared with specific questions that aligned perfectly with Aunt Kara's narrative. We realized she'd been coached. Jake, Emma, and I started keeping a hidden journal at school. The janitor, Mr. Peterson, noticed us writing frantically during lunch and offered to keep it in his supply closet. He mentioned having grandchildren our age and understanding that sometimes kids needed safe spaces. 3 days later, Dad showed up unexpectedly. Aunt Cara performed beautifully, expressing concern about our adjustment issues while we tried desperately to signal him with our eyes, but Dad only had eyes for the performance. He mentioned casually that his lawyer said we were adjusting well to the new environment. My stomach sank. He had no idea what was really happening. Then Mom's car pulled into the driveway. The situation exploded instantly. My parents launched into a screaming match on the front lawn about who was responsible for traumatizing us. Through the chaos, we learned they were now suing each other for damages. Aunt Cara filmed everything on her phone, barely concealing her satisfaction. After they left, she dropped her mask completely. Standing in the driveway, she looked at us with cold calculation. The pretense was over. We all knew what this was now. Marcus caught up with me at school the next day. His mom had been quietly investigating Aunt Cara's finances. She was drowning in debt, behind on her mortgage, facing bankruptcy. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about helping Dad's lawyer. She needed money, desperately. That evening, Aunt Cara served dinner 2 hours late. She'd withheld snacks all day, making us irritable and difficult. Emma was getting increasingly upset from hunger. I could see Aunt Cara's phone propped up, recording our reactions. In the bathroom, I helped Emma force herself to throw up the little dinner she'd managed to eat. Jake joined us, pretending to be sick too. We couldn't give her footage of us being difficult eaters or ungrateful. Aunt Cara's frustration was becoming visible. She needed results, and we weren't providing them. Her timeline was clearly running out. The next morning, Mr. Peterson slipped me a note during school. He'd been watching our situation and wanted to help. He understood something was wrong. His offer gave us hope we desperately needed. 2 days later, Jake discovered Aunt Cara's laptop open on her desk while she was in the shower. The screen showed emails with Dad's lawyer discussing payment schedules, specific amounts for specific types of footage. We quickly took photos with my phone. I still remembered Dad's number from before everything started. Using the school computer lab, I created a new email account and sent him the screenshots, evidence of what was really happening. Aunt Cara discovered our electronics that evening during a room search. She confiscated everything, claiming we had developed an internet addiction that was interfering with our healing process. The neighbors who witnessed this nodded approvingly at her responsible parenting. Emma's daycare teacher called the next day, concerned about her regression. Emma had stopped talking during activities and withdrawn from other children. Aunt Cara spun a masterful tale about trauma from our parents' divorce, positioning herself as the stable guardian trying to help us heal. Desperate, we used the public library's computers to email Marcus's mom directly. We poured out everything, the cameras, the staged incidents, the payment emails. But Aunt Cara must have been tracking us somehow. She called the library, claiming her runaway children might be there. The librarian reluctantly confirmed our presence. That night, Dad's lawyer visited. Through the heating vent, we could hear him telling Aunt Cara she needed to escalate the timeline. The payments were contingent on results, and patience was wearing thin. The next morning, Mom showed up, hammered and hysterical. She screamed about the emails, demanding to know what Aunt Cara had done. Aunt Cara calmly called the police, claiming she feared for our safety. Mom was arrested for public intoxication and disturbing the peace. Watching the police car drive away with Mom inside, we realized the system was still failing us, just like before. Mr. Peterson approached me during lunch the next day. He offered to let us use his phone to call Marcus's mom directly. In his small janitor's closet, surrounded by cleaning supplies, I finally spoke to someone who might actually help. Marcus's mom listened carefully, but warned that official channels took time. She advised us to document everything we could. The system moved slowly, especially when the guardian appeared stable and caring to outsiders. 2 days later, Aunt Cara announced we were switching schools. A fresh start, she called it. But we knew better. She was severing our connections, isolating us from anyone who might help. Our last day at school was confusing for everyone. Friends couldn't understand why we were leaving so suddenly. Teachers who had just started to know us wished us well, unaware of the real reason for our departure. Mr. Peterson found us one last time. He pressed a small flip phone into my hand, explaining his grandson had been in a similar situation. Mr. Peterson just became the unexpected hero of this twisted tale. Nothing says, "I believe you," quite like slipping kids a secret flip phone while surrounded by mop buckets and floor cleaner. He'd learned the importance of documentation and outside communication. This lifeline meant everything. Our new school was perfectly chosen. No Marcus with a CPS mom, no kind janitor offering help, no established friendships. Complete isolation. Exactly as Aunt Kara intended. We communicated through hidden notes in our backpacks, planning our resistance carefully. The cameras were everywhere in this house, too, but we were learning to work around them. 3 days into the new school, Aunt Kara orchestrated her cruelest performance yet. She denied Emma bathroom access during homework time, claiming she needed to learn better time management. Emma held it as long as she could, but eventually had a complete meltdown, crying and pleading. Aunt Kara filmed the entire tantrum, carefully editing out her own role in creating it. Mrs. Finch happened to be gardening over the fence during this incident. I saw her watching through the window as Aunt Kara smirked while Emma sobbed. The look of recognition on Mrs. Finch's face gave me hope. Dad visited that weekend. Aunt Kara showed him carefully edited footage of Emma's behavioral problems. Dad watched with concern, unaware of the manipulation behind each scene. We sat silently, knowing any protest would be twisted into more evidence. Using the burner phone Mr. Peterson had given us, we managed to record Aunt Kara talking to Mrs. Finch over the fence the next day. She brazenly discussed her arrangement, confident that Mrs. Finch would understand the need to document these troubled children. Mrs. Finch played along, asking just enough questions to get Aunt Kara to reveal more details. The recording captured everything. During a random room check, Aunt Kara discovered the burner phone hidden in Jake's mattress, but we'd already given the recording to Mrs. Finch, who had uploaded it to cloud storage using her own computer. The punishment was swift and severe, no meals until we admitted our violent tendencies and apologized for lying about her. She locked us in our rooms, saying isolation would help us reflect on our behavior. Jake had learned to pick locks from YouTube videos before our electronics were confiscated. That night, he freed us from our rooms. Desperate with hunger, he broke his bedroom window with a book and called quietly to Mrs. Finch. She appeared at the fence with sandwiches and water, passing them through the broken window. As we ate desperately, she revealed she'd been recording Aunt Kara too. Her doorbell camera had captured weeks of evidence, including Aunt Kara's cruel smirks and staged incidents. The next morning brought unexpected hope. Dad had shared the screenshots with Mom during one of their lawyer meetings. For the first time since their divorce, they were working together. Mom reached out to Marcus's mom, and a plan began forming. Dad's lawyer arrived that evening for what he called the final push. Standing in the driveway, he told Aunt Kara she had 48 hours to produce results. The footage needed to show clear behavioral problems, or the deal was off. Aunt Kara's desperation reached new heights. She locked us in our rooms indefinitely, sliding minimal food under the doors. We would stay isolated until we broke, she announced through the doors. But Jake's lock-picking skills served us well. We escaped our rooms that night and gathered in Emma's room, huddled together on her bed. We made a decision. Tomorrow, we would force Aunt Kara to reveal herself publicly. The plan was simple, but risky. We would create a scene in a public place where cameras and witnesses would see her true nature. It was time to turn her tactics against her. Morning came with Aunt Kara finding us compliant and ready for a family outing. Her suspicion was evident, but she needed this win too badly to question our sudden cooperation. We'd managed to text Marcus one last time, asking him to have his mom shop at the grocery store that morning. The pieces were in place. Inside the store, surrounded by shoppers and security cameras, Emma executed our plan perfectly. In a clear, loud voice that carried across the produce section, she asked Aunt Kara why she had lied about us pushing her. The accusation hung in the air. Shoppers turned to stare. Aunt Kara's mask slipped for just a moment before she grabbed Emma's arm, roughly trying to drag her toward the exit. Multiple shoppers intervened immediately. Store security arrived within moments. The entire incident was captured on the store's surveillance system from multiple angles. In the security office, as guards reviewed the footage, Aunt Kara's rough handling of Emma was undeniable. Her panicked attempts to explain were undermined by Emma's visible fear and the bruises forming on her arm. Marcus's mom arrived in her official capacity as a CPS worker. Aunt Kara couldn't refuse an evaluation without looking guilty. The situation was spiraling beyond her control. Then Mrs. Finch walked into the store, phone in hand. She'd received our emergency text and came prepared with her doorbell footage. Aunt Kara's face went pale as she recognized her neighbor. The parking lot became a circus of arriving vehicles. Mom's car screeched into a space, followed moments later by Dad's truck. They'd been alerted by Marcus's mom and rushed over. For the first time in years, our parents saw Aunt Kara's true nature as her careful performance crumbled. She alternated between syrupy explanations and vicious accusations, her mask switching rapidly as she tried to salvage the situation. Dad pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, firing him on the spot. The lawyer's threats to release footage fell on deaf ears. Dad simply told him to do whatever he wanted. Aunt Kara made one last desperate play, demanding we return home with her immediately. The thought of going back to that house of cameras and manipulation was too much for Emma. She wet herself right there in the parking lot, her body's stress response overwhelming her. Aunt Kara's disgusted reaction was caught by multiple bystanders who had pulled out their phones. Her cruel words about Emma being disgusting and pathetic were recorded from several angles. When the police arrived, Aunt Kara accused everyone of conspiracy. She sounded exactly like our parents had during their worst moments, convinced the whole world was against her. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Standing by the police car, I faced a choice. The uploaded evidence Mrs. Finch had saved could end this immediately, or I could stay silent and hope the system would work this time. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of Aunt Kara's confession to Mrs. Finch. Her own words admitting to the payment arrangement and staged incidents filled the parking lot. Aunt Kara screamed that the recording was edited, but Mrs. Finch calmly showed the police her phone with the original video file. The timestamp proved its authenticity, recorded just yesterday morning over their shared fence. Dad's lawyer arrived in the parking lot chaos, his expensive car screeching to a halt. He pushed through the crowd of onlookers, trying to claim ownership of any recordings we'd made. His face turned red as he demanded the phones be confiscated as evidence. Then he made a critical mistake. In his desperation, he revealed that Aunt Kara was getting our childhood home in exchange for the footage. The house Mom and Dad had fought over for years, now promised to their sister for manufactured evidence. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. I recognized her as Mom's coworker from the bank. She held up her own phone, explaining she'd been recording the lawyer's threats when he visited Mom at work. She had audio of him promising to destroy Mom's career if she didn't comply with the custody arrangement. Marcus's mom guided us to her CPS vehicle while the police sorted through the chaos. Inside the car, she asked us the hardest question yet. Did we want to forgive our parents and work toward reunification, or enter the foster system? Jake grabbed my hand. Emma leaned against my shoulder. We'd survived our parents' cameras, then Aunt Kara's manipulation, but we were tired of performing, tired of being evidence, tired of adults using us as weapons. I looked at our parents through the car window. Mom was crying real tears for the first time I could remember. Dad stood apart from her but kept glancing over with genuine concern. They looked smaller somehow, like the fight had finally gone out of them. I made the choice for all of us. We'll try forgiveness, I said, but with conditions. No cameras, ever again. Real therapy, not performances. And if they slip back into their old patterns, we leave, permanently. Marcus's mom relayed our terms. Both parents agreed immediately, their relief visible. They would start supervised therapy sessions and work toward gradual reunification. The court would monitor everything. Aunt Kara was still ranting as the police guided her into their vehicle. She insisted everyone was lying, that she was trying to help us, that we were disturbed children who needed discipline. Even as the door closed, she maintained her innocence. Dad's lawyer abandoned her instantly. He walked away from the scene already on his phone, likely moving on to his next scheme. Aunt Kara's calls after him went unanswered. Mrs. Finch offered to let us stay with her temporarily while the legal process sorted itself out. That first night in her small guest room, the three of us finally slept without performing. No cameras watched us, no one analyzed our dreams. We just existed. Emma didn't wet the bed that night. It was the first dry night she'd had in months. When she woke up and realized it, she cried with relief. At breakfast, Jake finally admitted something he'd been hiding. He'd known about Aunt Kara from the beginning. That changed everything about how I was seeing this whole mess. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked gently. He looked ashamed. "I overheard her on the phone that first day, but I was too scared. I thought maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she really was trying to help." The guilt had been eating at him. We hugged him tight, understanding completely. We'd all been trained to doubt our own perceptions, to second-guess what we saw and heard. It wasn't his fault. The family therapy sessions began the next week. The therapist made our parents sign a contract before the first session. Privacy was non-negotiable. No recordings, no documentation beyond standard therapy notes. Any violation would end the reunification process immediately. That first session was awkward. Mom and Dad sat on opposite ends of the couch, unable to look at each other, or us. But for the first time since their divorce, they weren't fighting. They were both focused on understanding how they'd let their war hurt us so badly. The therapist didn't let them off easy. She made them confront how their need to win had turned their children into evidence, how their surveillance had created anxiety and trauma, how they'd prioritize custody over actual parenting. Emma drew pictures during the sessions, not of cameras this time, but of houses with normal windows, families eating dinner without phones recording, kids playing without being watched. The therapist said it was a good sign. Jake started talking more in the sessions. He explained how he'd learned to pick locks because he needed one space that wasn't monitored, how he'd created that tiny blind spot behind his dresser just to have somewhere to exist without performing. Mom cried when she heard that. I found my voice too. I told them about the spray paint, how I'd fantasized about destroying the cameras, how I'd rather have gone to foster care than live as evidence, how their war had made me feel like I wasn't a real person, just a pawn in their game. Progress was slow. There were setbacks. Mom slipped once and tried to record a conversation with Dad about scheduling. The therapist caught it immediately, and Mom had to restart her individual therapy requirements. Dad got defensive during one session and stormed out, but he came back the next week and apologized. Mrs. Finch became like the grandmother we'd never had. She taught Emma to garden, showed Jake how to fix things around the house, and listened when I needed to talk. She never pushed, never pried, just offered steady support. 3 months into therapy, we had our first unsupervised visit with Mom. She'd moved to a smaller apartment, having sold the camera-filled house. The walls were bare, except for some of Emma's old drawings. No electronics except basic necessities. She was trying. The visit was stilted at first. We didn't know how to act without cameras. Mom kept starting to document moments on her phone, then catching herself. Old habits died hard, but by the end of the day, we'd managed to just exist together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Dad's visit started the following week. He'd also downsized, moving to a simple townhouse. He'd removed all surveillance equipment and even gotten rid of his smart home devices. He said he didn't trust himself with the temptation. Aunt Kara's trial moved forward without us having to testify. The evidence was overwhelming. Between the recordings, the emails, and multiple witness statements, her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She got probation and mandatory counseling for fraud and child endangerment. We heard later that she'd moved out of state to live with distant relatives. Dad mentioned she'd sent him a letter blaming him for ruining her life, but he threw it away without reading the whole thing. Some people never learned. The divorce lawyer faced his own consequences. The Bar Association investigated his conduct after Mom's coworker submitted her recordings. He lost his license to practice law. Dad said he felt relieved more than vindicated. The war was finally over. 6 months after that day in the grocery store, we moved back in with Mom full-time. Dad had visits every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. The schedule was flexible, based on what we needed rather than what looked good in court. Our new normal wasn't perfect. Emma still occasionally wet the bed during times of stress. Jake still preferred rooms with multiple exits. I still felt anxious when I heard phones recording, but we were healing. Mom and Dad learned to co-parent without competition. They communicated through a court-approved app that prevented recording. They attended parallel therapy sessions to work on their own issues. They even managed to sit together at school events without fighting. Mrs. Finch visited every Sunday for dinner. She'd become family in the way that mattered. She was the one who'd believed us, who'd gathered evidence not to win, but to protect. She showed us what adults could be when they put children first. The house felt different without cameras. We could cry without consequences. We could have bad days without creating evidence. We could be real people instead of performances. Trust rebuilt slowly, but genuinely. There were still hard days, still moments when the old fears crept back. But we faced them together as a family that had survived the worst and chosen to heal. Looking around Mom's living room that evening, I saw my siblings doing homework without surveillance. Mom reading without documenting. The only photo in the room was one Mrs. Finch had taken at her house, the 3 of us huddled together on Emma's bed the night we decided to fight back. It reminded us that we'd survived what was meant to destroy us. Together, we'd exposed the truth and reclaimed our lives. The cameras were gone, but our bond remained. That was the only evidence that mattered. Appreciate you hanging out while I dished out the snark. Hopefully it hit the spot. And hey, like the video if you vibed with the chaos. It helps more than you'd think.